I thought this old house, well, old by Australian standards, was a great subject for a 10-minute drawing. It's the sort of subject that we could draw with a lot more time and care and detail, but it's basically a fairly simple design with a little bit of decoration. And so if we're happy to do a nice, reasonably loose drawing of it, I think it's a great subject. So, as always, the important thing is to get the main perspective angles correct. The other perhaps challenge in this is to position these two windows in the front with this decorative moulding around them at the top. And you'll see what I've done is I've started with the left-hand side of this front section. I've come out and then I've basically positioned the angles between which the windows sit. I've positioned the first window, and then using that as a reference, I've drawn the gap, so drawing by negative space, and then the second window, and now I can fairly accurately pinpoint where the end of that wall is, where the corner of the house is. So having done that, I just massage that bottom angle slightly, make it very slightly more sloping towards the ground. And now you can see me doing these windows. I want to try and show that there's some curtains that are open in them. I just don't want to black out behind every window I see. A lot of artists do that. And sometimes it's appropriate and it looks great, but other times it can deaden the effect, particularly architecture on a domestic scale, I think, where a hint of curtains gives a hint of people living there. In fact, someone's been on the other side of that window to draw back the curtain. So I think it helps to give a little sense of narrative, of story to our drawing, to include details such as that, even when we're being pretty quick. You are watching this real time. This drawing, which I'm doing with a 0.3 millimeter fine liner pen, took me just over 11 minutes to do in real time. So I'm leaving in all the moments where I pause and I'm thinking so that you can see the full picture of what I'm doing as I draw, and the points at which I was hesitating to gather more information and the points at which I'd seen enough to do this. And look, if you're finding this interesting, please, why not hit the like button right now while you're watching, because that really does help me as much as I hope these videos are helping you. It certainly helps my channel to progress and grow. And if you are enjoying these 10-minute daily drawing videos, I would love to hear that in the comments, because it certainly will encourage me to make more of them. So I've done the fiddly bits with those windows, and so now I'm working on the rest of the house. I'm just checking this angle because there's a fairly thick line here with the darkness of the gutter in. If I don't think my angle is quite right, either not high enough or a little bit too high, I can bring it down by repositioning those lines I've drawn within the darkness of the gutter and just shifting the angle of the gutter slightly. But basically, I'm happy with it. And now I want to fundamentally finish this front section. So I need to do these shrubs, or they're not large enough to be shrubs, plants in the front. I was intending to come back to these with a little more line work. As it turned out, I didn't have time to do much more than what I've done now. So I'm lining up the veranda, firstly on my reference, with the part of my reference I've already drawn, and then I'm finding those spots on my drawing and using that to align. Now, maybe I've taken my angle down slightly too much, but it does follow the same perspective angle as the horizontal line on the front, so on the closest section, so I think that's okay. Now, of course, these gaps foreshorten as they move across. I probably should have done that first pole just slightly more to the left, maybe just a millimeter at the most. But it is a quick drawing. And the same thing, I'm aligning on my reference first with what I've already drawn on the reference, and then I'm doing that horizontally and vertically for this section to get the end of the building. I position the end of the building as it is in the reference between two of the veranda posts. And I'm also positioning the top of the roof, as you can see, with what I've already drawn, and I have to estimate visually the height, but that really gets the perspective working well, that if we were standing in the front looking at this, that the top of that pitch of that roof would be between the two windows. I don't quite get that line quite as neatly done, but hey, it's a 10-minute drawing. What I would have done is, if I'd had a little more time, is I would have repositioned the first line I did to align with that second roof line I did more accurately, because it would have been easier to have done that just given the way those lines look and where they are in the scene. But now I've moved on. There's a window to do. It might even be a door actually that's set back on the veranda. There's more shrubs. Now again, the front of the shrubs approximately create a perspective angle that follows the same patterns as the more exact lines in the architecture. So I need to make sure that I get that angle correct. And you can see I'm a great fan of throwing out a row of dotted lines or small dashes and dots to give me a visual sense of where I think positioning things are going to be. And then I adjust what I actually do according to whether I think that line is in the right place or not. If it's not in the right place, I won't necessarily redraw it because I don't want too many lines and marks there. But as I draw whatever needs to be drawn up against it, I'll shift them slightly up or down, whichever way I think needs to go. Now, one of the things that works really well in the reference is that the dark trees that we have on the left-hand side, because they throw a lot of the architecture into relief. They make it much easier to see, and it creates a nice, I think, balance with the darker areas of paint on the house as well. So I need to spend a little bit of time just literally putting enough ink lines on the paper to create dark values for this tree. And then I realize I haven't quite finished these shrubs. Just the hint of a pathway leading up to the house, but they're the sorts of little details that it's good to throw in. Again, notice I resisted the urge to do two straight lines because they're not straight. Well, they're pretty straight, but they're not smooth lines. It's a rough edge because we're looking at the tops of the blades of grass, and they create a finely jagged effect. And so some dots and dashes really do capture that as a gestural method of representing them, capturing the effect, I think, quite adequately. And it's quite clear that we're looking at grass there, I think, grass on each side of the path leading up to the house. So I'm really drawing this part's like breathing in and out at the same time. I'm looking and drawing at the same time, trying to stay continuous with the pen on the paper, but still be looking enough at the reference to get the information I need to do the tree as well as I can, and not to basically put ink where I don't want it or where I need a gap to be later. So I'm just thinking now, what else needs to be done? And we've got this side of the house. There's a downpipe here. I probably agonized over the downpipe a little too much for a 10-minute drawing, particularly given how much of the 10 minutes is up now. So now I lock in the gutter in here, and that does snap the front appearance of the house a bit better. And we have this tall chimney as well, which I'm thinking I better put in. So I'm aligning the top of the chimney in the reference with what I've already drawn underneath, and then I do the same on my drawing. Now you'll notice there is lens distortion in this, which is where the camera lens pulls the vertical lines in towards the center, and this becomes more obvious. The distortion becomes greater as the vertical lines move away from directly in front of where the camera was. And sometimes because the photo's been cropped, that means that that center line is not actually in the center of the photo we're looking at, because we're only looking at perhaps more to one side after cropping So we have to actually use the lines that we see to help tell us. But generally, that's a distortion that for a building this size from this distance, we do not see in life. So I like to remove it and make everything straight up. And if you're not sure where the actual width is, it's at eye level. Whatever the distance between things at eye level is, that's where you draw the lines straight up. So everything becomes wider above eye level slightly as you push the lines back out, but below eye level, things become slightly narrower because as you push the tops out, pivot in on eye level, the bottoms of those lines pull back in the other direction. But it's a good thing to practice because very often the camera distortion is not something we want in our photo. For a larger building or sometimes for visual drama, it can work well. We certainly want to be able to remove it in our drawing if we want. So we're getting pretty close to the end now. A little bit of hatching to represent the shadow under the veranda, but I was very aware of the time. And here I go doing the last downpipe, and I think that's pretty much it. Here I am still bringing the pen up. There's just a bit that's probably part of the chimney wall that juts out. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, really enjoyed doing this 10-minute video and really enjoyed the result. And it's a great subject, so I really hope you give it a go. Of course, you'll find this photo on my channel community page, so it's going to be easy to get. You don't need to bother looking for a photo. You can just sit down for your 10 minutes of drawing and start straight away. So why not give it a go? But look, whatever you draw and however you draw it, make sure you have fun, and I'll see you next video. And if you're enjoying these videos, there is a playlist of them, so you can go to the playlist and just click into whichever one you haven't drawn yet. I'll see you next video. Bye. But whatever you're drawing and however